Look at this photograph, taken by the crew of a Greek freighter in 1961, in the middle of the open ocean. At first glance, it looks like the conclusion to a harrowing yet ultimately uplifting story, a child surviving against impossible odds after a tragic shipwreck, finally awaiting her rescue. But there was no shipwreck. 11-year-old Terry Jo Duperrault is adrift because Captain Julian Harvey murdered her parents, her brother, her sister, and his own wife for life insurance money. She is fleeing a killer who deliberately sabotaged their boat. We inherently trust photographs. We view them as objective records of reality. But a camera only captures a fraction of a second, locked entirely within a tightly constrained border. The true terror of an image rarely lives inside that frame. It lives in the unseen reality lurking just outside the crop, a reality driven by fatal naivete, by invisible threats, and deliberate deception.
Let's start with the first category, the tragic miscalculation. These are moments where a subject's total belief in their own safety masks immediate approaching doom. In October 2011, 3 teenage girls hiked into a scenic Utah canyon to take pictures for social media. They posed right next to the active tracks, completely absorbed by their phones and the loud rumbling of a passing freight train. Their final photo captures them smiling. What they couldn't hear over the noise was a second train coming up the adjacent track. Seconds after the shutter clicked, 2 of the girls were killed instantly. 8 years later in Tanzania, Steven Weber swam down to the window of an underwater hotel room. He pressed a handwritten marriage proposal against the blue-tinted glass, while his girlfriend joyfully filmed from inside. But Weber miscalculated his air supply. During his ascent, he lost consciousness and drowned before he reached the surface. This fatal disconnect between perception and reality happens even without a camera. A 55-year-old man in Korea sat down to eat sannakji, a delicacy of raw, wriggling octopus. He swallowed a piece, but the live suction cups clamped down and formed a powerful vacuum seal against his esophagus. Doctors couldn't break the grip, and he suffocated. In all these cases, a moment of pure joy or routine confidence is frozen permanently. The subjects are completely oblivious to the lethal reality closing in just 1 second later. Sometimes people aren't caught off guard by an accident. They willfully step past safe boundaries, severely underestimating the hostile forces waiting on the other side. In 2018, John Allen Chow spent years planning an illegal expedition to North Sentinel Island. He ignored Indian law and historical warnings, believing he could peacefully interact with one of the world's last uncontacted tribes. Upon landing, the Sentinelese shot him with arrows, dragged his body across the beach, and buried him. Decades earlier in the Canadian wilderness, Stefan Michalek was scouting near Falcon Lake when he spotted a smooth, saucer-shaped craft resting in the trees. He walked right up to the intensely hot exterior. A vent suddenly opened, blasting him with superheated gas that set his clothes on fire and burned a perfect grid into his chest. Or consider Randy Weaver. Facing federal firearms charges, the former Green Beret retreated to his remote cabin in Idaho, setting up a heavily armed isolationist holdout. When U.S. Marshals attempted surveillance, a firefight broke out, killing a deputy and Weaver's young son. The FBI deployed tactical units with fatal rules of engagement, authorizing snipers to shoot any armed adult on sight. Over an 11-day siege, Weaver's wife was killed at her doorway. The unseen element in these images isn't a freak accident. It's the lethal weight of an opposing force. Whether driven by curiosity or defiance, these individuals stepped into territories where they possessed no leverage over the final outcome. But there is a darker psychological truth. The camera can be actively weaponized to hide calculated evil. In 2014, college freshman Alan Hubrey posted cheerful Instagram photos from a Ritz-Carlton and an Oklahoma football game. He looked like a normal student enjoying a weekend trip. In reality, he had just shot his mother, sister, and father in their kitchen, using the weekend getaway as a highly public, meticulously documented alibi to inherit their estate. An even more chilling manipulation happened in 1971. Devout accountant John List systematically murdered his mother, his wife, and all 3 of his children to, in his twisted logic, protect their souls from poverty after he lost his job. He lined their bodies up in sleeping bags across the estate's ballroom. Then he walked through his home and methodically cut his own face out of every single family photograph. By destroying his printed likeness, he successfully blinded the police investigation and vanished for 18 years. These cases demonstrate that a photograph can be engineered into a perfect, airtight lie. When the person smiling at the lens is the architect of the crime, the frame serves as their ultimate shield. Much of the horror in these stories stems from the sharp disconnect between what we see and what we know. A peaceful vacation photo or a smiling portrait turns haunting the moment we recognize the threat that was closing in, just out of view. Whether a subject is destroyed by their own careless hubris, a hostile environment they willfully trespassed into, or the calculated murder they are trying to cover up, the borders of the photograph offer a dangerous illusion of absolute safety. We rely on historical documents, personal camera rolls, and social media feeds to record our lives, but they are incredibly effective liars because they are nothing more than highly curated crops of reality. The next time you see a picture-perfect moment frozen in time, take a second look. You have to actively question what terrifying truth is hiding just outside the frame.